Hi everyone, it's Matt from Tech Minute, and today we're going to assemble the GikFun LED Snowflake. This is a surface mount soldering project which is a little more difficult to assemble because of the tiny components, but still easy enough to do if you take your time. I used an Attiny chip, 5 colorful LEDs, some resistors, capacitors, and includes header pins on the back in order to program it. It uses a CR2032 coin cell battery to power the whole thing, so let's get started.
So here I just want to show what the package looks like. Comes in this box here. Shows instructions for the user manual online here, and the code for the snowflake as well too. Yeah, and a little thank you from GikFun here too. So what comes in the package is basically the PCB board for the snowflake. So as you can see here, which will be as I mentioned earlier, surface mount components here that we're going to put together, and basically the the power of where you put the coin cell battery. Now, one thing I like to do is that it also came with a bunch of resistors and capacitors. Like here's the resistors. They got the capacitors here. You got the green LEDs, blue LEDs, red LED, and white ones, as well as the header pins here. I'll just bring one over here, show you. And the little, the actual chip itself, which is pretty small. What I like to do is open up the package and sort them all out to what they are and label them. So here, as an example, I put res here for the resistor packs, because they're really small. It's a bit tricky to see which one's which, but these resistors, you can solder them in either way, so they're not really directional, which is kind of nice. Here's one for the capacitors. I just wrote a little thing called cap, and this is what they look like up front here. So you can kind of see what they are. Same thing, you can mount them either way. Now here's the green LEDs. And you're probably wondering, how do I know what the difference between the green LED and say the blue ones? Here, see? Which they all look the same, right? And the white ones as well, and the red ones. So one of the tricks I'll show later here is how to identify what color you're using. Some of the tools that you're going to need is, one's going to be a multimeter here, and this is actually going to be the trick to show you how to find out what color LED you're using. As I showed you earlier, this is the board that comes with it. You're going to need some tweezers here. I like these bent edge tweezers for taking the components and mounting them on the board. This is called the Attiny x86 programmer board. This is something you'll have to purchase extra. It doesn't come with the kit, but I'll put a link in the notes here to show you where you get that from. That's basically to load the code onto the snowflake for you. This is some solder flux, that's recommended when you're doing surface mount components to allow the surfaces to be clean as well as to adhere properly. Obviously, you're going to need a soldering iron. So here's my soldering station right here. Another additional component that's highly recommended, although not mandatory by no means, is a fume sucker here. So it's basically like a fan with a carbon filter on it and sucks away all the fumes for when you're soldering. This is really useful so that you're not breathing in the very harmful fumes when you're soldering, whether it's lead solder or lead-free solder. I typically use lead-free solder just for those reasons. Another optional component is the solder sucker here too, and basically you just press down and then it sucks it up from there. Nice to have if you add too much solder or you screw something up and you need to fix it. Another one that's extremely useful as well too, although not mandatory, but nice to have, is one of these soldering stations with the helping hands here, so that what this does is this holds the board in place while you're soldering. So it's like you have 1, 2, heck 3 extra hands, as well as it's got a nice magnifying glass so you can actually see what you're doing, especially for surface mount components that are really tiny. It's nice to have that. Okay, now that we showed you the components, let's get started. Okay, so one of the first things you want to do is check that all your LEDs are functional. So for this project we're going to use 2 blue LEDs, 1 green, 1 white, and 1 red, but we got to figure out what's what, right? And as I showed you earlier, I labeled them, but I'm going to show you how I had to find out what was what. So they come in this little package here, and what you got to do is you got to kind of pull back a little tab here on the top so you can expose the little LED. So one thing I'll mention to you is certainly note where this is, because these are very tiny and they're very easy to lose, and especially if you've got carpet under you, you'll lose them real quick. So I just pull it back, take one out, and what we're going to do is just flip it on the ground here. Yeah, and you see I already fell out of the picture here, but it's very, very, very tiny. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just move this around here, and what you really need to know with LEDs is they only work in one way, so you need to know which one's the positive and which one's the negative. So for this one here, and I'm going to try to zoom in as best I can here, looks like a little speck of rice, or it's even smaller than a speck of rice, to tell you the truth. So really got to be careful with these little things. So what you're going to do is take your voltmeter here, set it to continuity, so this looks like a arrow, and it has like a little indicator that it's going to beep when it makes a connection. So I'll just show you here, just putting the 2 electrodes together. That means you got power, okay? So what this does is it sends power from the positive here, which is the red, to the negative terminal, and makes power, and says that you've got a good connection. So we're going to use this to figure out what color the LED is. So as I mentioned, there's a little dot on the top of this that's green, and it says to you that that's the negative. So I'm going to take the negative terminal here and take my positive terminal and put it right under the bottom. There's little notches in it. So once they make a connection, you're going to see what color this LED is. Well, see that? It turned on. So not only do you know that it's a good LED, it's a white LED too. So now we know that that's a white LED. We're going to put it in our spot for the white LEDs. Now I'm going to go and check the rest of these. I'll do, see which ones are blue, which one's green, and which one's the red one. Okay. So next up, now we've checked our LEDs, what we're going to do is turn on our soldering iron. And what you're going to want to do is set it to below 360 here Celsius, so that especially when you're working on this, you don't want to like burn the components with it. So I have mine set to about it's about 350, 340. That's usually a good temperature there for this type of thing. So we're just going to flick this on here, wait for it to warm up. While we're waiting for that, as you can see here, I got the helping hands out now, which they are very helpful. Trust me, when you start doing enough soldering, you're going to find out that you wish you had, like, instead of 2 hands, you wish you had 10 hands. So helps out a lot. So what we're going to do is mount our board to this helping hands here, and when you clip these on, just try not to clip it onto where the pads are that we're going to be soldering to. So these are the pads here. Just don't clip on these, because that's where you got to work. You can clip them on the side here, and it shouldn't really affect anything. So while we're waiting for that, what we're going to do next is we're going to start the process of tinning one side of the pads so that we can easily get our components on. So as I mentioned earlier, the LEDs are a single direction. So typically this is the negative terminal on the outside here. Okay, that's what we're going to start tinning first, meaning put solder on it and apply it to the pads here. And solder is nothing more like electrical glue in a sense, so it helps to put the components in there. And those have to go one way, and then it shows on here, as you see, LED 3, LED 2, LED 1. On the picture it shows you what color goes with what LED. I'll explain what it is. So LED 1 is going to be blue, LED 3 is going to be blue, LED 2 is a green, LED 4 is a red, LED 5 is the white one, so it's going to go on the bottom here. And this one here is actually the top of it, where you would hang a string or something from your Christmas tree. Right here is where the resistors are going to go. There's 5 of them, so they can go in any direction, so we're just going to put them wherever. These are the 2 capacitors here, and this is where the little circuit board is going to go right in the middle there too. So once the soldering iron is heated up, we're going to actually apply some flux to the pads here, heat it up a bit, clean it up, and then apply some solder, tin it, and then get moving on that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to tell if your soldering iron is hot enough and if it's ready to go to start soldering. So as you can see here, I have a sponge. Obviously you're going to go and wet the sponge first. It doesn't have to be crazy wet, just damp is good enough. You're going to take the soldering iron out of the holder, and you see the tip here, right? Just touch the tip to the sponge here, and if you hear it kind of singeing, that's pretty good. And what we're doing is we're cleaning the tip, because if you have a clean tip, it'll make your life so much easier. So there you go. See, that's nice and clean right there. Now what we're going to do is tin the tip. So I have a little bit of solder here, so I'm going to pull the solder out. Just apply it to the tip here, and it should just start smoking. Actually, I'm going to turn on my fume fan first too, just because I'm starting to solder now, so I don't want to smell the fumes. But I'll turn it on right now. There we go. And you're going to see the fumes probably go this way. I'm just going to clean that tip a bit. You just apply a little bit of solder, clean it. There we go. Nice and bright. Look at that. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's really good. Start with a good tip, you'll be a lot happier. And you're always going to be kind of cleaning it periodically. If you start seeing any black dust or oxidization, as they call it, on it, you're going to want to clean it again. So yeah, that's really good right there. We'll just tin that quick. I'll just put this in here for a second. Now we're going to bring our board down. What I'm going to do is I have this solder flux here, just to kind of clean the pads. It's usually best practice to do it, so I'm going to try to adhere to that. So it's just like a syringe. You just press down here, you apply a little bit on the edges here, and then you're going to use the solder to kind of clean them all right up. And then we can start placing our LEDs. Okay, we're going to start adding some flux to this. You just want to put a little bit on it. You don't have to go crazy, just coat both pads. Wherever the silver is, or the gold is there. Each one of the pads, we're just going to put a little bit on. Now we added our flux, we're just going to kind of burn it off with the soldering iron just to kind of clean up the pads a bit. So you just got to take your soldering iron here and you just tap it, and it's going to smoke a bit. See? Just like that. Smokes a bit, boom, boom. What we're going to do first is we're going to put a piece of solder or tin in each of the pads here, one on each of the side. This will make it easier when we do mount the LEDs and the capacitors and the resistors, and they'll stay in place. You just add a little bit of solder, tin your tip, just like that. And then when you want to apply it to the board, you just put down the tip here like this, and you add the solder right next to it like that, and it should form a bond with it. Maybe a little less than that, but you get the idea. You just put a little bit here, tap it in, away you go. And then for the CPU piece, we're going to just tin one of the headers. Just quick here, very light one. Like that. Okay, now so just showing this for LED number 3 here. We're going to place it on here and solder the other end of it. So as I mentioned before, you're going to want to ensure that the green part of the LED is facing the outside. So we're going to place it in here. Like so. And as you can see, it's very, very small, so you got to be very careful with the tweezers here too. And we're just going to heat it up. What you want to do is just heat the solder up and place the component, and it should just glob right against the one side there. Boom, just like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the positive side of this too. So I might even have to shove that a little bit further in, but we'll see. Like that. I know, I had to readjust it. Okay, now we're going to put a little bit of solder on the other side of that LED there and get it put on. And that's the tricky thing with these, is it's very easy to put too much on it too, but it'll work. We're going to do LED number 2, which is the green one. So I took the magnifying glass out just because I think it's easier for me to solder it in, but you can still see kind of what I'm doing, and I showed you with the other one. Yeah, and that's the second one there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the LEDs. Like I said, number 1 is going to be a blue, number 5 is going to be the white, number 4 is going to be the red. Now we'll do the red. Alright, now that we got the LEDs on, we can start doing the resistors. Here's one of the key things with the resistors is they can go either way, and you want to do it with the writing on the top. So it's very hard to see, but there's black, like white writing on the top of this, so I'd say just place it down here, just like we did with the LEDs, although the direction doesn't matter, you can do them either way, and it's just a bit easier, but yeah, just place it like that. Get your soldering iron and touch it, push it, and you're done. Alright, just like that. And you just kind of let it, you'll see the solder when it becomes like really soft and liquidy. You can just push it in and that's it. It just needs to make contact to the one side. And you don't need a lot of solder, as you can see. I'm probably putting way too much on, but it's very tricky when you do it this way to get it right. But you know what? You'll still get the same results. It'll work. You get 6 of these with the package, so you can always practice. That's it. See, just a little bit right there, and it just goes in like it's that quick. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more resistors here. Alright, next we're going to do the capacitors here. I just did all the resistors, so show you. We just peel this back. You're going to take 2 of these, and what we'll do is we'll just kind of place them on here, and it's the hard part. Just try to take them out instead of dropping them. You just go like this, and you just kind of like place it. It's weird because it kind of sticks to it. You just place this here. So that's the capacitors. Now we're going to do the CPUs. So when we place the CPU, there's a little dot, and what we want to do is make sure that dot points to resistor 5. So I'm going to pick it up here, and I'll show you what I mean. So even though you got 6 of these, there's a little dot that's right about here. You want to point to resistor 5 here, so next to capacitor 1, and just place this down like this. What you really want to do is make sure that the feet, it's flat and all the feet line up to each other. Okay, as best you can. This is probably the trickiest part of this whole thing. There, I managed to get it flat. So now the quicker part is you're just gonna do solder real fast. Just make sure you don't cross it, okay, if you can. Okay, so next what we're going to do is solder on the computer chip here. I did one of the legs so far, but we're going to finish this one off. So what you want to know about this is you basically don't need a lot. Like, you just need to do like a little titch of solder across the rest of these pads here. So there's 8 of them. So I have 7 more to do, so you just pretty much heat it up, touch it, done. Like, you don't need a lot. You just put a little bit of solder on this, and you don't even need to, like, just to tin it. Like, just a little bit. That's it. I don't want a lot because I don't want to overdo it. Now, normally you're not supposed to drag it like that, but I'm telling you, this makes it easier if you do. Just, I don't know, Just tap it on and let it go like that. Honestly, it's so much easier. On. Okay, now what we're going to do, since the top's done, just check everything. I got the resistors and capacitors, everything okay. We're going to flip this around. And now what we're going to do is solder on the power. So what you got to note on this, I'll show you here. So VCC means the positive, so that's the positive sign. Ground means the negative. On the coin cell here, there's a, I don't know if it's showing the camera, but there's a positive on the top here and a negative one on the bottom left hand here. So that translates to this VCC and ground. So what I like to do with this is, you know, pre-tin them. Like just start it off from the beginning again and just, you know, pre-tin the whole thing. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to tin the top of the solder gun, which you should, and clean every time. Put a little bit of that there. And I'm just going to heat this up. And what's going to happen is the solder is going to flow around it and suck it right in. And I find that makes it a lot easier. And another thing I'll note about this snowflake is you're going to want to move this just to the left a little more. Because right here is the header pin thing, and I find that having this over the battery over a little more like that will make it easier for you to solder the header pin. That's it. Well, that's probably the easiest one to do on this whole thing, I'm gonna say. Hardest is always the surface mount components. So, last we're going to do is the header pin here. See, these allow you to program the snowflake. So I'm going to tin one of the leads here, like we did last time for all the surface mounts. Just a little bit there. Tin this here, and then just don't even need much, just like a little bit like that. And we're going to take our thing here. Now this one has 90-degree feet. So you see the top here, this is the header pin where you're going to put it in. You see these little feet here. That's what's going to go on here. So we're going to mount this here just like so. That's it. You don't even need much for these, just a little bit, just to make contact. That's it. Okay. So the soldering's done. You might just want to do some visual inspection, make sure there's anything that isn't set, but yeah, no, it looks pretty good. That's what it should look like after you're done. Alright, now that we're done soldering here, here's the moment of truth. I'll flip this over here. And, you need a CR2032 battery, a little 3-volt battery here, positives on the top, negatives on the bottom. So what you're going to do is, the top of the battery is positive here, you're going to slip it under this little tab here, and push down. And it's going to fit in the housing. And then guess what? Have a look. Oh! I'll shut this other light up here. Yeah, so there's a default program on it. And if the lights, if the LEDs all show up like this, you did a good job. Good done. Look at that. On part 2 of the video, we're going to show you how to program this to do others, like little patterns and stuff with the header pin here. Hey everybody, also just one thing I wanted to mention is since we're using that flux on this here, you see some of that yellowing. You're going to want to get some isopropyl alcohol. You can get this at the dollar store or any of your pharmacy stores, just 50% stuff. It's used to clean wounds and stuff like that. But it's also good for cleaning off the flux off of here because it is corrosive, and you don't want it corroding up what you're doing. So I just got a little Q-tip here, just put some of the isopropyl alcohol in the bowl, and I'm just going to wipe this off here to kind of clean it up a little bit.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and leave some comments below, and thanks for watching Tech Minute.